Grinch Fan Club featuring Stacey Renee, the life coach, mindset coach, life on life's terms coach, because life is life. And I want to thank you all for being with me here this Sunday morning. For those of you who know, I'm in a different place. They still don't have my electricity back on. It's, my neighbors told me it's unlikely. Oh, this hair. Sometimes I don't even know what's going on here till I get in front of this. And, I'm not in my own mirrors. So, God, there's no telling what I, look like. But anyway, they tell me it's highly unlikely I will have power. Good morning, Mr. Simon Vittert, in my house until tomorrow. So let's hope. Keep our fingers crossed. Pray, whatever. It'd be great. It'd be a miracle to get it on today. I will keep y'all posted. But it's likely, realistically, that it's not going to be on till tomorrow. So here's the Grinch and I. So I'm happy that y'all are joining me for the story time this morning, for the soul stories, because there's 3 Stacys with story time. Let me put my glasses back on so I can see who's talking. John London. Hey, it's good to see you today. I get to see you in the daytime hours, right? It's still day for you. So yeah, Grinch 2, right, because I needed air conditioning last night. I slept the night before last with no air conditioning. I'll probably sleep tonight with no air conditioning. The temperature is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit here at nighttime. So it's bearable. But yesterday I was looking at my eyes. I had these dark circles and it's like, oh no, I'm not trying to come see my friends on YouTube this morning with some dark circles under my eyes. Grinch is very talkative today, isn't he? Yes, he is. He's directing the show today. He's very talkative. He's in a different space, so he's like hanging out with me. He's got to stay with his mama because he's in an unfamiliar space for him. So, yeah, we needed some air conditioning. No, it's not my new home. My electricity's out at my house. And so they said it'd probably be Monday before I get electricity back on because these electric people don't apparently work on the weekends, and I understand that. You sleep nude, hot weather calls for it. I hear you. I hear you. I've been sleeping with air conditioning until the night before last, and yesterday I was looking in my mirror and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think those are some dark circles because I don't sleep comfortably with no air conditioning. So yeah, and y'all don't, air conditioning is not a big thing over there in London, is it, John? London? Same in India, yeah. It's down. I'm down in Mexico. I'm too scared to sleep naked, y'all. I sleep in some little, lightweight shorts and a sports bra because, yeah, I don't know, raised in Texas, you just know you might have to get up fast and run. So, anywho, thank y'all for being here. No AC is becoming a necessity. I know. When I get moved over there, I think I want to get one of those kind that you can roll. Have you seen those? Do they have those over there, John London, or in India? The kind that you can roll to your room. My daughter had one of those, and she could roll it from her living room to her bedroom. But it got pretty cold. It got pretty cold. The beach from where I live is like for a walk. It's like a 45-minute walk, but that's a lot better than in Texas. Getting down to the coast in Galveston was 5 hours from where I'm from in Texas, Fort Worth, Texas to Galveston. It was like 5 hours. So here I just have a 45-minute walk to get down to the beach. If you drive, it's like less than 7 minutes. If you take public transportation, it's about 20, 30 minutes. So, hello, Mike G. So this morning, we're going to finish up this week. Next week, we're going to be going into codependency. But this week, we're going to talk about, something, John London, I've not seen them before. We're on our 5th heat wave. Oh my gosh, yes, it is so hot there because where I'm looking at moving, I'm looking at France now because the Grinch can't go to Spain. Quaker parrots are outlawed in Spain. So no go for Grinch in Spain. So I'm looking at France now. And so, oh, okay, Mr. Simon Veer. Okay, hopefully you can watch the replay. I hope you have a super Sunday, okay? Enjoy your dinner. So I'm looking at France now, and I'm looking at the place I'm looking at France. Oh my gosh, you guys, my besties in Valencia, you're in London, but it's a heat wave. It's a heat wave. I think it's going to start looking better though, John London, in the evening time. Maybe you can sleep with your windows open because I'm always looking at the weather in those places. And like next week, not this week, but next week, it's going to get down to 50s and 60s in a lot of places in the evening time at night. I could sleep, at 70 with the window, at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to have to learn this Celsius stuff because I know over there everybody's in Celsius. But yeah. Yeah, France is going to be easier because when I looked up, on, AI, when I looked it up, they said, that France receives birds all the time. There's 2 airports in France that it's pretty common to receive birds because it's not easy to travel with birds like it is cats and dogs. Thank you, is CAC. So, yeah, so France is going to be easier. The income requirement is lower than with Spain, and also getting my bird there. Hello, lit up. So, lit up camel. So that's going to be easier. So that's my target destination now. What do you think about that, John London? So I was going to do Italy, but they were saying Italy has too much bureaucracy. And that's kind of the way that it is down here in Mexico. It's kind of different. It takes forever to get things done, and it's, really confusing. Thank you very much, Virsh. Verstrad. So this morning, if you're new to this channel, please feel free to hit that like button, y'all. Okay, Angel, thank you for being here this morning. I'm going to just tell y'all a few things. I want everyone to stay and be here. We're going to be talking about addiction isn't always what you think this morning. So we're going to talk about the stories we don't recognize. And the thing is we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about my age, and we don't talk about my dating status. And so that's it. All right. So I want you all to stay. And if you feel that this content is going to be helpful for you, true, France works well. Spain has a fast track visa, 2 years for people from certain Spanish speaking countries. Oh, yeah? Yeah. But if they don't let the bird in, then this bird's been with me for 10 years. That was the only problem. That was what I was going to do, is that fast track visa. But good morning, Jen. How are you this morning? I hope that today's topic is going to help you some. I've got a good story for us all today. Last week I was kind of, I wasn't feeling it in our story. I don't know what was going on with me last week. We all have these times. We have good weeks, bad weeks, good days, bad days. And it's not it's not an indication of who we are. Even losing my electricity, I could be having my conversations with my source, God, or, that's who I call it. But anyway, I could be having my conversations being like, God, why's my lights out? I try to help people. I try to do good things. Why's my lights out? You know what God says to Stacy? God says, Stacy, this ain't personal. You got to take care of your stuff, and it's like, okay. It's not that I didn't have the money. I had the money. Any of y'all, and I'm sure this would be a whole nother topic for us. When you have the money for something, I went to pay it. Things are, like I said, weird here in Mexico. You're hoping one day to get Portuguese citizenship. That's a goal, John London. So, Jen, I'm glad you're here this morning. So what happened was I went to pay my electric bill, and you pay it in this machine. And so the machine refused to take some of my money. So it wasn't that much. So I thought, oh, well, they'll just attach it to my next bill. Do they do this in Europe or anywhere, y'all? I don't know if they do it. But in America, if you pay the majority of your bill, they just attach the leftover amount to your next bill. Good morning, Dominic. So I thought that was what was going to happen. No, that was not what happened. So in essence, that's what? It was my irresponsibility because I had this magical thinking, as we sometimes do, about, oh, well, they'll just attach it to the next bill. That's okay, because I didn't want to mess with it. Great rising, Frenchie. It's so good to see you this morning, Dylan. All right, Dylan, please don't make comments like that. Stay on topic. The topic this morning, and you're welcome to be here. And if y'all like this topic, please hit that like button. Usually is a balance system here, yes, unless you pay as you go. Yeah, that's the way I thought that it was here, but no. I learned I tell y'all, I'm quite transparent with y'all. Sometimes I learn my lessons the hard way, and that's why I'm able to sit here with y'all, is that I'm not stupid because I learn them the hard way. I'm stubborn sometimes. That comes with this Leo territory, right? So, yeah. Greetings, frogs. I'm glad that you're here. You have a parrot as well? Okay, well, I'm not talking about your parrot's name. My parrot's name is Grinchy. Grinch. Because he's green, like the Grinch. So I'm going to get into our topic today because I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I want to thank you all for being here. And please, if you like this or any part of this, please hit the like button, the hearts, whatever you will. Because we're going to talk about our stories. This is Soul Stories with Stacy. So we're going to talk about addiction. We're finishing out our week for addiction. If you're new here, what I do is I usually pick a topic for the week and we just kind of peel the layers away. Thank you, outdoorsman. I do my own nails. That's not how I get pampered. Massages. I go for a massage, but I can do my own nails and I'm going to do them as long as I can. So I appreciate that. That's really quite the compliment. So addiction isn't always what you think it is. So we're going to talk about the stories we don't recognize this morning. Okay. And, so what we learned this week is on Monday night, this week we talked about a conversation around addiction. We started by recognizing when most people hear the word addiction, they think drugs or alcohol, right? That's what most people think. Because a lot of addictions aren't addressed. And so that's why I'm here, is we're addressing it. We also talked about how food, I work with many people with food addiction. Food, shopping, I've had these addictions too. Smoking, relationships, sex, pornography, chaos, being needed, control, comparison, social media, scrolling, and so many other things that become our ways to cope. So we talked about the sea of denial on Monday, when we say, and I know that that's the first thought. I'm going to talk about codependency next week, and I was in that sea of denial. First off, my addiction. I grew up in addiction, and we know that addiction can be genetically predisposed, whether it's food, drugs, or alcohol, and that can be genetic, your chemistry, that craving, and that's, that can be genetic. It's also social, but it doesn't matter because if you've got an addiction, the outcome is just the same no matter which way we claim it. Because I work with some people with addictions who did not have these things, did not, have a visible addiction. So the sea of denial is me thinking, that I was going to be different than my dad or my mom. And, we don't want to be. And in our teenage years especially, we're fighting for our autonomy, which is totally normal. But the thing is that we get rigid with these things, especially when there's some pain attached to it. So a lot of times in this sea of denial, we'll say things like, that's not me. I'm not an addict. I can stop whenever I want. It's not that bad. I know when I first went into the programs, because I did go to the 12-step programs, the first ones I went to, thank you for those hearts. The first ones I went to, they were like, there was people with some strong addictions in there. And I was like, oh, I'm not like that. I just want to smoke some weed and drink. And I wasn't like them because I wasn't doing a lot of things that a lot of people with hardcore drug addiction did. With alcohol, I wasn't that bad with alcohol because still no electricity. And I did bring the Grinch because I wanted to get some sleep last night. I can't sleep as good with no electricity. Not simply because no electricity, because there's good and bad in everything. So the thing is that I'm going back home today to no electricity. They said that probably I won't get it back on the weekend. But anyway, if I do, it'll be a miracle. But anyway, I'm going back home because there is some silence and solitude with no electricity also. So it really helps me be grounded. Speaking of electricity, right? So anyway, thank you though, Kim. I'm so glad you're here this morning. I've heard of that addiction, and I suspect somebody I know has that. They keep trying to rub my feet, and it's just a friend, and I'm like, I'm not really, I don't want them to get the wrong idea about rubbing my feet. You know what I mean? So I hear you. How many, you sound like you know. Yes, I do have shirts that I'll call my statue shirts because the bird does poop on my shoulder. But, sometimes, so, yeah. I know that's weird, Lily Berry. Thank you all for being here. We're talking about different addictions today because a lot of things people just mostly think of drugs and alcohol when they think of addiction. But I work with people with food addiction, shopping addiction, drug, alcohol addiction, the obvious, but there's also addiction to porn. There's addiction to chaos that people don't realize that there is. There's addiction to love. that really is a thing. And in our addictions, in that sea of denial, it's like, I'm not hurting anybody. So we broke that all down this week. And on Wednesday, we talked about I need, because a lot of us didn't get to learn to listen to ourselves. And we will tell ourselves what we need, but we won't really go deeper than that. A lot of us weren't taught to go deeper than that. And so sometimes we just don't think about it. So that's what I like to. And so if we don't, we won't really realize a lot of things that may be hurting us that we don't realize. When we say, I need a cigarette, when we say, I need a drink, what are they usually associated with? Stress, right? But is it escape? So I need to find somebody. Sometimes I'll be working with people and they'll be like, I think I'm ready for a relationship. And it's like, oh, you're ready for a distraction, huh? Because you're getting deep in this work. Sometimes it's like, I need to check my phone. That becomes a habit. And we talked about how things that once were rewards have become habits, have become addiction. So checking our phone. How many of y'all, I catch myself doing it and I have to stop myself. This is why I'm enjoying not having electricity at my house right now, because I can be watching TV and still checking my phone. And that's not focusing, because I still don't get the full gist of what it is I'm watching on TV, and I don't get the full gist of what's going on my phone, and that's sending a lot of confusion to my brain. Hello, sure. You may not have been told this by anyone yet, but you're a wonderful, intelligent, beautiful person, and hopefully the rest of your day goes amazing. Well, thank you, Hello, Sheree. I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, I have notes here so that I can read your comments. I love getting to see your comments, and I love, getting to participate with you. So thank you for participating in this, Lily Berry. Whoa, I never thought someone being ready for a relationship was them looking for a distraction. It depends, Lily Berry, because a lot of times when a relationship fails, and I used to do this, Lily Berries, when a relationship will fail, maybe we spend 3 months without a relationship, right? When I was in love addiction, this is what I did, but it was a compulsive behavior. And see, that's what addiction is it's, obsessive and compulsive. No matter what it is, it's an obsessive and compulsive behavior. And it oftentimes comes from lack, fear, and these kind of things. And it's, like I said, genetically and social, but it can come from part of it is, the symptoms of it is lack and fear. So yeah, it's not always that getting into a relationship. Sometimes people have done the healing work and they're ready. But how many of us go into a relationship and we get told this is what the last person did, and we get this comparison thing going on? A healthy person, when they go into a relationship, they're not talking about the past relationship. They're going to be in the present relationship. When we've done the healing work, we're not trying to get somebody else to heal us from our past relationship. But a lot of people do that, and I used to do that when I was in my ute, as they say, when I was younger. Lily Bear, you're afraid of relationships? Well, I get it. I've been afraid. I'm not afraid of them now, but I do have definite boundaries with myself, and I have definite boundaries with other people, people who want to rub my feet, people, people who are messaging me on Facebook trying to talk to me and meet me or whatever, because I'm going to meet in a relationship organically. And this is what I teach on here is I want to meet somebody with that's running in the same field that I'm running. I'm not trying to, so yeah. Well, thank you, Corey Clark. God loves you too. I know there's a bird on my shoulder. Isn't it great? Thank you all for being here this morning. I hope that something helps you this morning. And I know. No one knows really what color. I mean, I suspect that Jesus, looked Israeli or something like that. Jesus was not white. I agree. So, Web Matrix, you've been married for 26 years. Congratulations. You're going to have to tell us how that's done. What do you think has helped you in your marriage for 26 years? That's amazing, and congratulations. So, in looking at addiction, back to the I need part, I need to sit when we listen to ourselves. A lot of times as children or even I know that a lot of us, our parents didn't learn to be heard. They were taught to be seen and not heard. So we may have felt like accessories to the crime or innocent bystanders in our parents' marriages, or whatever, if you grew up in chaos. And hence, that's why you may be addicted to chaos, is that feels normal for you. And that's a lot of the things, is when we're talking about relationships, is what feels normal. So, yeah. So in this, we asked a different question when we said I need. So it's like, am I enjoying this or am I using this? Because are you really enjoying it? When I'm scrolling my phone while I'm watching TV, am I enjoying either one? No. I'm looking for extra sensory. So sometimes are we looking for somebody to entertain us? Because a lot of people do want to be entertained, and that's definitely a description. Thank you, Kim. You're amazing. So there's a difference between that. We all have things we enjoy. Palestinians, John London, going to give us some wisdom. Palestinians are the close and living. Yes, I agree with that, John London. I think so too. It's really weird when we see people, make Jesus into. But yes, I agree. I don't think Jesus was white. And it doesn't even matter, because it's the things that he taught. A lot of times people get hung up on he died on the cross. Yes, he did, but he was trying to teach us something. Whether you believe that he's a Messiah or not, the man was teaching some great stuff. Yes. So, yes. So, anyway, we're going to talk more about the need, but thank you. So, there are things that we genuinely need and things that we enjoy. So knowing the difference between what we need and what we enjoy, but listening to our own words. This is the relationship that you develop with yourself is quite the adventure. And that's going to be the strongest relationship you have, because yes, what was asked earlier, if I have a strong relationship with myself, I won't settle for a relationship that's not aligned with me. Mel, you got to get over this feet and shoes, darling. So I won't get into a relationship that's not aligned with me. I have gotten into relationships. I tried to fit into their mold in the past, and that was part of my codependency. That's right, Kim. I like what Pink says about this. Pink says we're all pink inside. That's a story called Oh My God, Oh My God. It's kind of about sex, but anyway. But it says or which one is it? But anyway, she says we're all pink inside, because that's the truth. That's the truth. So, back to my notes. Thank you, Kim. So when something becomes the thing we automatically reach for, when something becomes the thing we automatically reach for because we don't want to feel what we're feeling, or even boredom. Boredom is the devil or evil's playground, whichever way you choose to believe, because I know some of us don't believe in the devil and whatever, but there's definitely evil. I'm not in denial that there's, so it's a playground that's kind of a dangerous, tricky slope. I know, girl. I know. Some people don't know, though. Some people don't know. So the boredom, we need to become curious about that. Curious about what we're saying. Thank you, Kim. We need to become curious about what we're saying about ourselves. A lot of us are so curious about everyone else. Why are they doing that? Why are they doing this? Or, oh, I want this from them. And that may have been our programming. And that's what I try to do, is interrupt, break patterns and interrupt cycles here, because I know I had to break some patterns and interrupt some cycles. So one of those things, is like, when we're reaching for something, one of those things, it's indicative of busyness. Idle hands are the devil's plaything. That's exactly it, John London. We can get in some trouble. So in breaking that down is that busyness, that no time, and that's how we may be distracting ourselves. But the other can be, described, it's procrastination, right? And then it can be described as laziness. I've worked with people who think they're lazy because they're procrastinating, and it's just fear. Both of them come from fear. One has rapid feelings that are ignored, and the other one could be described as flight or freeze, and neither are recognized as the autonomic nervous system or the central nervous system, in the central nervous system. So, yeah. So, when we can recognize how we're running internally in our body, because we sometimes talk about our body. Sometimes people say, I'm stuffing my feelings, which could be indicative of food addiction. We may say these things, but not even listen to ourselves. And I know I used to do this. And then it would be like, I would be projecting onto other people and say, nobody ever listens to me. But this is why I say the relationship we have with ourselves is the most important relationship, because if I don't listen to me, I might have unrealistic expectations that somebody else is going to listen to me. This is what we'll be looking at next week is expectations and codependency. A lot of us in codependency have these expectations. And it's not just about you needing money from somebody else. A lot of people, like a lot of people when looking at addiction, they think it's just drugs and alcohol. But no, it's very expensive. So is codependency. You may be taking care of everybody else with your money, right? So this is what we're looking at. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not dependent on anybody. Everybody's dependent on me. Codependency is still when everybody's dependent on you. More so, even. So because you don't have, Friday we talked about the consequences. Okay. So Friday we talked about the consequences because you don't have to completely destroy your life for something to have consequences. I know I did, and thankfully I got to see consequences with my dad with his addiction. I got to see consequences of my mom giving her power away in codependency because I gave my power away too. A lot of people learn to do that. We talked about that, that we learned to give our power away. People didn't have the resources that they have now. So you will have consequences. I'm not a therapist, Wave Matrix. I am a coach. I have a lot of experience. You can't even buy this. You can't even buy this kind of experience. No, because you don't have to completely destroy your life before something has consequences. Sometimes it's our health. Sometimes it's our money, our relationships, our time, our ability to be present, and sometimes the person we're hurting is ourselves. For me, when I did get sober, I can tell you that I wasn't in trouble. I didn't have the DUI or the DWI. I didn't have any of that. I was going to have one if I didn't stop when I did. I was going to, because I wasn't, and I knew every good dog has its day. I was teetering close with those blackouts. I had a minivan. I had 2 kids. I had the life that a lot of people thought would, it looked really good on the outside. My husband was a government worker. I looked like I had the life. I worked for the schools, Was I working for the schools then? I don't think I was working then. But I had a life that looked ideal from the outside, but I still hated myself when I looked in the mirror in the morning. I couldn't stop myself from drinking, maybe for 2 weeks. Yes, like a life coach. I specialize in addiction recovery, codependency, and grief, Web Matrix. Lily Berry, how did you stop drinking? I don't mind you asking at all, Lily. I had to go to AA, and I didn't want to go to AA. My dad had gone to AA. Hi, Chancha. My dad had gone to AA, and the last thing I wanted to be was an alcoholic, and that's why I smoked weed. I smoked a lot of weed. See, and that's the thing about recognizing our addictions is I didn't think I was an alcoholic because I smoked weed, and I didn't think I was an addict because I smoked weed, because weed's natural, right? So that's what we say. That's what we say. But the problem was you smoke weed about once a month. That's good, Web Matrix. If I could smoke weed once a month, I'd smoke weed once a month too. I don't smoke weed like that though. For me, when I smoke weed, when we get honest with ourselves, and that's one of the first things we have to do, when I get honest, when we're honest with ourselves and there's transference of addiction, it's a real thing. So the thing is if I smoke weed, then I get thirsty because it makes me looser. It makes me less uptight. So I get thirsty. And when I get thirsty, I think, oh, an alcoholic beverage wouldn't be bad. And then when I get thirsty, there's not enough, because 1 is too many and 1,000's never enough of whatever it is that I'm using. And so then I use the alcohol and I'm in overdrive, but I start getting, for a while, then I start getting sleepy. And then I start putting things in my nose or down my throat, and then when I start putting things down my nose or, in my nose or down my throat, all bets are off. Who knows, So that's the thing, is I can't control myself. It doesn't matter what or how much I use, that I can't stop once I get started. If you smoke more often, you develop tolerance. Yeah. Lilyberry, my parents smoke every day and they want to smoke with me, so it's hard. I know. I know. I smoked with my dad and mom. I did. And I always wanted my dad's approval until I quit getting high and quit drinking. And I finally got it when I quit getting high and quit drinking. Even though I got high and drank with him, I still I still didn't get his approval, his respect. So go figure. So we talked about the self-hate and the shame of addiction when we go into the I need and we act obsessively and compulsively and we go ahead and escape. We're not perfect people. We talk about progress rather than perfection. Turn it 180 and you'll never smoke. Okay. So one drug leads to another, and that's for me. It did. Not everybody does that, because I've talked about that this past week too. Is that sometimes some people can just enjoy. I have a friend down in Texas. She can smoke a joint, and then on a Friday night, and then she won't smoke again until a week later, a month later, or whatever. But once I start, I don't stop. See, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's my addictive behavior, is that, and I don't think even after 29 years of being clean and sober, I'm not willing to pick up, because once I pick up, we don't know what will happen. And I'm like that George on It's a Wonderful Life. Remember It's a Wonderful Life and George? When George went to the drinking, nobody liked him, but as long as he didn't drink, he was the best dude around, And so, yeah, I like not drinking and being a good person, because I have the other in me too, and I have the pain from the other, that I could pick it up anytime I want, but I don't want to. I like living this life because it is a new way of life, and it takes some time to get used to it. So it's not just one drug leads to another. You're lucky, Web Matrix. I know that not everybody does have that problem. It is a healthy fear, Kim, and I've done it this long without it, and I'm totally fine with doing without it. Yeah. Judo Planet, I agree. I quit weed. Last time I relapsed, the habit instantly returned. I know, it comes back even worse, doesn't it? That's what I see, because, I still am in the rooms sometimes, and I see people go out and come back in, and it's worse than it was. And alcohol makes you sick. That's good. Yeah, weed does relax a lot of people, and I'm not against weed. This isn't about me being against smoking. It's not about me being against drinking. It's about helping people that do have a problem realize, and some people who have these problems will judge somebody else, because they say the smoking snobs. I used to smoke. I quit smoking 35 years ago, but I'm not a smoking snob. Now I have my preferences about smoking, and stuff, but I understand the feeling like you need to smoke a cigarette, because I was a chain smoker. Lilyberry, I started drinking again yesterday, and you feel horrible about it. I know. So this part may feel, you may, I understand that. I would quit for 2 weeks, and then I would pick it up again, and it didn't get better. It didn't get better. Before I knew it, I would be back where I was before. Hey, Hamid, I'm good. How are you? So that's the thing, that if you have a problem with these things, if you use them for more than a reward, if you use them for more than a habit, the addiction, it does affect, the consequences will be our money, because we don't know what we're spending, right? Our relationships, because shopping is an addiction too, because mine went from food, then to drugs, because I was doing the Lucky Charms of the pills for weight loss, because that ran in our family too. That was the addiction. And then, so that even led to an eating disorder. And thankfully I didn't have to be hospitalized. But then it went to, once I lost weight, I got into the love addiction. And I didn't know I was in love addiction and codependency, but I was. I wanted to have a partner to make me feel better. Exactly, Judo Planet. Exactly. You have to learn. We have to build our mental muscles and emotional stamina, and relationships are a great part of that. That's why we're going to talk about that next week, is codependency, or this week, is we're going to talk about codependency, because a lot of people learn some behaviors about shoulds in relationships, expectations in relationships, and things like this. And a lot of those things can lead to relapses, dealing with other people. I know for me, I didn't relapse, but dealing with other people was a hard thing, and I had to work on my codependency. Yeah. You're excited about that subject, Kim? All right. We don't talk about politics here, Den Snow, but you're welcome to stay. Thank you, Kim. So those things will affect our relationships, our time, and our ability to be present. We're addicted to dopamine because we've developed a lower tolerance for suffering. Absolutely. And that's why a lot of people get into toxic relationships, is that dopamine and the serotonin hits when they're, sad in the relationship. They get the dopamine, and then when the relationship comes back, so that's why a lot of people end up in that push-pull behaviors, and people may call it a twin flame. Grinch has really got a lot to say about this, doesn't he? They may call it the twin flame, but the push-pull relationships, that are unhealthy. So yes, exactly. Hello, House Roar, Omega Roar. So we talked about the self-hate and the shame. I did it again, right? And that's just like what was just being shared, the self-shame, that shame of I did it again. And it weighs heavy on our soul. We're trying to fill the hole in the soul with our addiction, so they call it the hole in the soul, with our addiction. But really, we were born whole. We were born whole. We just decided that for some reason we needed something outside of ourselves, or maybe we didn't, because that's the thing, is we talked about decision last week too. Is it a decision? Because sometimes our addiction may choose for us. And so that's why, when you do seek out a 12-step program, we talk about being able to make your own decision so that affects your choices and consequences. No, Geeko Channel, the parrot doesn't really do tricks, and it has its own personality. It doesn't do things that I suggest. It wouldn't be plucking if it did. So we talked about self-hate and shame, and I did it again. I'm sorry, I'm going back to my notes. Good morning, Ramon. How are you doing this fine morning? It's good to see you too. Awesome, and Veer, you're back. Did you have a good dinner? Oh, you got some other chores? Judo Planet. Now that I've stopped smoking, I've started eating glutenlessly. I traded a weed addiction for a food. That happens. That is so common. So my addictions went like that. And then when I had kids, I was trying to be normal. So I got a shopping addiction. Then it went to the shopping addiction because I was still looking for something outside of myself, coming from that lack that I talked about earlier. So lack is peeled away on different levels and layers. It always peels away on different levels and layers. When we have this lack, if we grew up in lack mentality, sometimes it was what our parents said, that we have a lack mentality. And that imprinted on us, whether we feel like it did or not. A lot of the things we wouldn't learn, we wouldn't know how to look at something and say, oh, this is what this is. You think your wife has a shopping addiction? I had a shopping addiction too. And it would be because I was afraid of conflict and confrontation, the void in your soul. Yes, and it's, when I'm working with people, I tell them, we got to dig that stuff off of your soul, that shame and that guilt. Because our addiction causes a shame and a guilt. And so it weighs heavy on our soul. And we start identifying ourselves with the shame and the guilt, and rather than that being whole, because you were born whole. So I talked about that the week before, about how when we're born, I had that shopping addiction. I ended up divorced and bankrupt with that one, because I don't know when to stop, right? So I have to watch it, and that's why it helps for me to identify. I usually don't like labels, but it does help me to identify myself as an addict. That way I can moderate, because if I don't forget, then I don't try to rationalize and justify and think I'm normal. Mr. Simon Bear, I don't know why women have a lot of shopping addiction. As a man, I hate it personally. Well, some of it is because women can. Because when we talk about that lack mentality, we talk about a little bit of repression. And in the United States, women couldn't even get a credit card, couldn't rent an apartment, couldn't do anything till 1974. So now that women have a lot of rights, women do a lot of things. A lot of men do have shopping addictions too. They do. You are so right, Lily Berry. Yeah, men do too. It comes out as motorcycles, cars, things like this. Or what else? We have a few men in here. Do any of you here claim or notice your shopping addiction? Sometimes it can be sunglasses. I've seen men that bought a lot of sunglasses. Men here, how many sunglasses y'all got? Tools, yes, Kim. Tools, sunglasses. I've seen so many men that may have all these sunglasses. So we talked, okay, so Jetto Planet. I think I lacked in affection from childhood, and it's going to sound stupid, but I think it came from being rejected from my crushes in grade school. When I finally started dating, I was a foolish jerk. No, that's not stupid. That's not stupid at all. Me too. Me too. I had crushes when I was in, I didn't go to kindergarten, but when I was in first grade, I already liked boys because it was that, a lot of times we just want that attention, right? That male attention or female attention. And so we start looking to somebody outside of ourselves to give us that. And I'm not saying my mom didn't pay attention to me. My dad, he worked back in those days, the man worked and the women stayed home more, so I think that we're all breaking these gender-based identities. So I appreciate that in here. And I'm not saying that we're going the other extreme. I'm just saying that men should be allowed to cry. And I'm saying that women, can have their own independence too. Yes, I do know there's a bird on my shoulder, Sven. Ramon, soda. Soda's a man's addiction. There's a lot of women addicted to soda too, though. I've got a friend, she's addicted. Web Matrix, shoes. Yes, shoes. Thank you. Yes. Is it like sneakers or the other dress shoes? Sven, Miss, do you know? Yes, I do know there's a bird. LOL. My mom's a mechanic and my dad stays at home. That is so cool, Lily Berry. I know that nowadays a lot of men stay home and take care of the children while the women work, and I don't see anything wrong with that either, So I'm glad that we're breaking those roles. So anyway, that's my wife's addiction. Oh, that's your wife's addiction. Yes, Web Matrix. We love some shoes. I've got how many pairs of sandals I have? I have a lot of pairs because down here in Mexico, you got some chanclas. So I have a lot of pairs of sandals. Yeah. So we like some shoes. So, and it may have been when she grew up, she only had, again, when it goes back to lack, I know for me and some more people here, is that sometimes you only got one pair of shoes for your school shoes, and nowadays that's unheard of, right? Well, almost, right? You don't just have one, you may have one primary pair of shoes, but you got your dress shoes. And I had some dress shoes too. I just always would break the heel off of them. So, all right. So that's where we ended, on Friday, is that the reminder that we don't have to hate ourselves into changing. I used to not change anything until I got mad, angry. That was a learned behavior, is that until I got angry, I didn't change things. But now I can just discern, because when I just learned how to discern rather than get angry, because that was my central nervous system, is, nothing changes until it changes, and I had to get angry. But now I can see practically, because I've calmed my nervous system down, I can see practically when I need to change, when something's not working for me, and learning my lessons the hard way, that, I don't doubt if she grew up in so, so now that she can get shoes, I think that's where a lot of shopping addiction comes in, is that when we didn't have something when we were younger, and this is also where hoarding comes in. So when we didn't have something when we were younger, sometimes we make up for it as an adult because we can have it. And that, going back to that childhood, like somebody said, even in grade school, what happened in grade school? I tell people that I had a fear of being stupid. When we look at our fears, and that's what we look at when we're actually figuring out our whys of addiction, is I had a fear in grade school, and how we developed a false esteem. Because that false esteem is definitely linked with our addiction. And so when I was in grade school, I had a 5th grade teacher that told me, Stacy, put your thinking cap on. And she would tell me that in front of the whole class. And then I had another teacher. My mom had to go to the school and chew another teacher out one time in 1st grade for, hitting me on the head with a pen, because that teacher was like telling me something about. So I had a fear of being stupid. Then in middle school, I had another teacher tell me, Stacy, you run like hot and cold water. Back in those days, we didn't know about childhood trauma. So sometimes when I went home, I didn't know what I was going home to. You know what I mean? And so and it wasn't so bad when I was a teenager in high school. It was just that I had those hormones going on along with the past trauma, and I just couldn't focus. You three? I currently paused dating to finish my education, and stress led to weed addiction. And when I stopped smoking, I started food addiction. I hope once I get my doctorate, I can find a wife. Yeah. But two, learning to love yourself now. Not love yourself enough not to hurt yourself. Because when we get into our addictions, we're actually hurting ourselves, and we say, I'm not hurting anybody. But I know that with food addiction, sometimes we're causing ourselves to have high A1Cs. We're getting into diabetes. We're getting into some other things that, a lot of the people are on the GLP-1s, and that's controversial. But I believe that, if it helps people have a better quality of health, and it does lower the diabetes, and it does lower the food noise and everything else, so that people can live a fuller life. I get to work with people with food addiction that sometimes they can't, when we started working together, they couldn't get on a plane comfortably. They didn't even want to get on an airplane because they, first off, there's a seat problem, but there's the bathroom problem too that a lot of people, and so when they are able to do things, we got to do, so yeah, it can really keep rolling on, and we keep thinking, hoping it's going to get better, but just hoping alone won't do anything. So sometimes we do need a coach to help us understand what is underneath that, because we will intellectually try to figure these things out, because you are smart, just like I was smart. But I kept not asking questions because I was afraid to ask questions, because I was afraid of getting hit on the head with a pen, even though that had been several years ago. I was afraid of being told, put your thinking cap on, that all meant that I was stupid. So I was afraid of looking stupid, but this is how addiction works. The more I was afraid of looking stupid, the more stupid I looked, because I didn't ask questions so I could learn. And this is how that vicious cycle of addiction turns, okay? And that was just the personality behind the addiction. The addiction itself and what I was doing, thank you, Jedi Planet, the addiction and what I was doing was, a symptom of, something that it was kind of went back and forth, the chicken and the egg, right? We don't know which causes which, but we need to get off that spiral. Good morning, Eric Glock. You have a great day too. So, that's when, we don't have to hate ourselves into changing, is all that I'm saying. So we can begin to see what we're doing without judging ourselves. When we learn to speak to ourselves differently, because the thing is that a lot of us, when we do it again, we have a terribly negative self-dialogue, and then we may do one thing right, but then we're like just hoping, back to trying. And we often say, I'm trying. A lot of the people that I work with, at first when we start working together, they say, I'm trying. And it may take a year for them to quit saying, I'm trying. I'm trying. It may take 6 months. It may take 3 months. It depends on how much, first off, they have to see me twice a month before anything's, because some people will try to only see me once a month, and, then sometimes it doesn't, work. So it has to be, but we have to stay consistent, because that's the problem. That's where a lot of the shame comes in, is because consistency. Sometimes I know for me with my addiction, it helped to have people who believed in me more than I believed in myself. So support, I'm always talking about support, and a lot of people never had support their whole life. They don't know what support looks like, because support might have looked like somebody controlling you when you were growing up. A lot of people had that. Support looked like somebody was controlling you, saying, I told you needed to do this, I told you needed to do that, and that's what they thought support was. I talked to some people the other day, about the way that we think, because some people are insulted because somebody doesn't speak back to them. And that we talked about earn and deserve in here, because a lot of people were demanded to have respect, and that that people learned that they had to earn respect or something like this. This is an old tape that plays. I don't feel that way. If you do, that's okay, but I don't feel that I have to earn anybody's respect, that anybody has to earn my respect. When I'm comfortable with myself, I feel like that I get to choose what I'm drawn to, and otherwise, my self-dialogue definitely needs improvement. I have a burst of self-improvement, then something critical like family issues come up, then all my efforts. Family is the hardest thing. family is the hardest. That's where our basic triggers are. I used to say, it didn't matter. Once I worked on my codependency, I wasn't so affected about the way that other people behave. I learned that they act the way they act because that's the way that they act. But with family, and you have care and love involved, and when we don't love ourselves, when we didn't learn to love ourselves, and loving ourselves, I don't know that means that our parents didn't love us. I'm not saying that. I think that self-love comes with our autonomy as we get older. At 2 years old, we want autonomy. That's when we learn to say no, right? Then it is, as a teenager, we start wanting our autonomy. We tell our parents, it was different back when you grew up. And guess what? It was. It was. But it doesn't mean that what they said didn't have value, that we can't add it to what we're learning. So, but when we have to fight for our autonomy, we go to this extremes. Then as an adult, you get to be 18, 19, 20, there's also a level of autonomy. And so this is why in codependency, we'll be talking about that last week, some people did not get to have their own autonomy growing up. So there's that. And sometimes we looked for other people to tell us who we were. Thank you, Jetto Planet. Lilyberry. How does someone know their parents aren't treated them right if that's all they know? See, that's a good question, Lilyberry, because I don't believe that we need to blame our parents. So it's not about blaming our parents. It's about understanding that that is all they knew. And I'm not talking about people who are survivors of some abusive things. I'm talking about, if our parents spoke a certain way, like they did the best that they could. My dad was verbally abusive, but it doesn't mean that he meant to be, because sometimes people learn to control that way. That was their support. They were told, I'm trying to support you, and telling you what all they do for you, and that creates more of an obligation. And this is why we may feel less than even as an adult, but our parents didn't mean to do that because their parents did it and their parents before that did it. And they just all, I know for me, I tried to do better. I think my parents tried to do better than their parents. I know that they did. I know my parents tried to do better than their parents. So it's not about blaming our parents. It's about when we heal ourselves, we learn to have compassion for our parents. When we don't feel like we have to live up to this perfection, we won't have expectations that our parents have to live up to this perfection either. But it's not to say that we didn't have our life experiences and our feelings. That's part of our autonomy. Hi, Sammy. God bless you too. All right. Thank you. I'm glad that you're here. Kim, our parents did the best they could. There's no instructions on raising kids. That's it. Jetto Planet. I feel like as a man, I'm supposed to be accountable for everything, so the negative self-talk is frequent. I believe that a lot of men feel that way, Jetto Planet. That, that's a lot of times men weren't allowed to cry, growing up. They weren't allowed to get overwhelmed. They weren't allowed to get frustrated. It's like, man up. These kind of sayings. Man up. Don't be a sissy. And I hate that for men. Because that's not fair and that's not nice. But that was the best that their parents knew, because the people before that told them probably worse things than that. So that's where we get into transgenerational trauma, which is something that people didn't talk about. They didn't even know about and hadn't defined a long time ago. And do we need these labels? But the reality is that everyone, it's not necessarily... What's trauma to one person may not be trauma to somebody else. And a lot of us have learned to negate our feelings because, well, at least this didn't happen, right? We were taught to rationalize and justify, well, at least this didn't happen. My dad would be like, don't be like your cousin, So the bar was only like, don't be like your cousin. And really a lot wasn't applied into me getting a higher education. And because of that pain, you know what I did? And my daughter she did not appreciate it, is that I wanted her to go to the best schools. I focused so hard on her education. I would move so that she could go to certain schools. No, she wanted me to quit moving. She's like, Mom, So, and my mom did what she did because her mom did what she did. So that's the way that it is. And they're good people. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad people. But yeah, it is. And that's what I was saying earlier, Jetto Planet, about I'm glad that people are breaking this, because crying is the healthiest way to release frustration, being overwhelmed. And all of us get frustrated and overwhelmed. It doesn't matter, what sex that you are. We all get frustrated and overwhelmed. And crying is the most healthiest release. And I believe that those tears water our soul. I do. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're sending lots of love and prayers your way, okay? Thank you. Jetto Planet. I'm definitely dealing with transgenerational trauma. My grandparents both let my parents down. Yes. And so and they probably tried to do better than theirs, just like I tried to do better. You know, my parents were not bad. They both, they both did the best they could. Mr. Dunham. God bless you too. Thank you. So, y'all ready for story time? Y'all ready for this? See if you relate. I like to tell the stories because sometimes our central nervous system, when we haven't done the healing work, I know for me, just like when people tell me after my addiction, that once I get, it's like we think the only if disease, only if I could quit drinking, only if I could quit doing this, only if I could quit doing that. And that's why we have that transgenerational trauma, is this only if disease and this transference of addiction. You are very welcome. I'm hoping that this is helpful. So this is why we have this transference of addiction and things like this, is because it's the only if. I'm so happy. Thank you, Judo Planet. If anybody else relates with what I'm talking about this morning and you want to hear more, and want to meet with me, I get on here on Sunday mornings and Wednesday mornings, but I also get on here on Monday nights and Friday nights too. So hopefully you'll subscribe and hit that notifications bell and be part of this loving community. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lily Berry. I appreciate you all. So I'm going to tell a story because sometimes we relate more with stories, like watching a movie or reading a story. We can relate more deeply with that. So let's just take a deep breath just to get focused and in the moment. So take a breath in and release. We do breathing at the end of these live videos because I want you to feel the feeling of being regulated and regenerated. Thank you so much, Marshall Teach Blackbeard. I hope you're subscribed too. Again, y'all hit that subscribe and smash that like button if you will. So here's our story, and then we'll breathe after this, okay? We'll do the story, the closing, and then the breathing. All right, so this is 3 kinds of addiction we're going to talk about this morning, okay? So let's call the characters in this story Jack, Maria, and David. Luke. What I'm teaching is, we've talked about addiction this week, so I'm telling a story about addiction, but because a lot of people think addiction is just alcohol and drugs, but there's so many different types of addiction. So we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to tell the story now, Luke. So hang in here, and then it's kind of a recap in closing, and then we'll breathe, okay? So Jack, Maria, and David really didn't have much in common on the surface. Sammy. I'm told to try to reach out about my neck being so badly broken and tell people now I'm a C2 complete quadriplegic and ventilator dependent. Sending lots of prayers. That's hard. Yeah, that's really, I can't imagine. Thank you, Luke. Thank you. All right, Ridge. Yes, Ridge is praying. So they didn't really have much in common on the surface. Jack drank. Maria didn't drink at all. And David had been in recovery for quite a while. Okay. So each of them had learned something, though, about addiction that they hadn't understood before. Jack had been drinking for years, and everybody knew it. And everybody except Jack, maybe. He'd say he'd only drank because he'd had a hard day. Then his partner would leave because she couldn't take it anymore. Jack's drinking, of course, got worse. And when something happened because of his drinking, there was always an excuse, right? She left me. I'm under so much stress. Nobody understands what I'm going through. And there was always someone there to help him clean it up. His partner had done it for years. And when she finally left, it became someone else's job. His sister would call his boss. His friend would pick him up. Someone would make sure his bills got paid. Someone would apologize for him. Someone would explain why he couldn't make it. Oh, that's good to know, Mr. Dunham. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Someone would say, he's really struggling right now. His partner left him and he doesn't have anybody else. And that's how the cycle kept going. Okay. Jack drank, someone else fixed the damage, Jack experienced the relief, and everybody moved on until the next time. They kept helping him, though they were being, they thought that they were being loving. They weren't trying to enable him, but they genuinely believed, if I don't help him, no one else will. Y'all have people like that in your life? I know that I've done that too. And that question kept them trapped. And then there's Maria. Maria had a completely different problem. She didn't drink. She didn't use drugs. And if you asked her, she would have told you she didn't have an addiction. Maria was a wife and a mother. Hello, Lenny. No, I'm from Texas, but Kim's from Tennessee. And yeah, so Luke, sounds like this person has an addiction or giving up. Yeah. So now we're on to Maria, though. Maria doesn't think she has an addiction. So she was a wife and mother. She worked. She took care of the house. She cooked dinner. She remembered everyone's schedules. She took care of everybody else's needs. And every afternoon on her way home, she would get anxious driving in traffic. She knew that when she walked through the front door, there would be more demands. What's for dinner? Did you get this? Can you help me with that? Mom, where is? Maria was tired after working all day, so she started stopping at the drive-thru on her way home to calm her central nervous system. She didn't know it was to calm her central nervous system, but she had this gnawing feeling of all these questions when she walked through the door. She just wanted to, so she wasn't hungry. She told herself she just needed the energy after working all day and then walking through the door knowing there was going to be more demands. Should have eaten in the car before she got home. Then she'd walk through the front door and cook dinner for everybody else. She didn't look like she was eating too much. The funny thing was, she really didn't think of herself as someone who had a food problem. She had to eat. Everybody eats. She was not just getting something quick. She was just getting something quick, sorry. She was just getting something quickly. Except she wasn't getting something that was giving her energy that her body needed. She was getting something that gave her a few minutes of relief, a little comfort, a little distraction, something for herself, a little something that belonged to her before she walked back into everyone else's needs. And then she'd go home and do what she always did, take care of everybody. Maria didn't see the pattern. She saw herself as responsible. She saw herself as the one that could handle everything. And she couldn't understand why she was so exhausted, unhappy with her weight, and continually doing something she had promised herself she wasn't going to do. Anybody relate to that story? And you can change the character to masculine or feminine, whichever one works for you. Then there was David. David was in recovery. He had already spent a lot of time looking honestly at his own addiction. But something else had surprised him. He had to look at codependency. For a long time, David thought his problem was other people. He wanted people to understand him. He wanted them to appreciate what he did. He wanted them to see how much he gave. And when they didn't, he got angry and he felt unappreciated. And he'd think, after everything I've done for you, maybe David learned obligation growing up. A lot of our parents did. But as he worked through his own recovery and began understanding codependency, he started seeing something he hadn't understood before. Thank you for sharing that, Lily Berry. Yeah, and you could have got it from your parents. I started getting gray hair at 25, and I asked my mom, I didn't have kids either at 25, and I asked my mom, why am I getting gray hair? I had that Steven Tyler, Joe Perry patch of white hair, and I'm like, why am I getting gray hair? I'm only 25. She's like, honey, because you got parents. So sometimes our parents, They share too much with us. They don't mean to not. And sometimes that can cause us to worry, to learn to worry, right? So, as he worked through his own recovery and began understanding codependency, he started seeing something he hadn't understood before. People have their own agendas, people have their own experiences. People don't always see the things that we see them. And people aren't always going to appreciate us in the way we want them to. And that was hard for David to realize, really hard, because he had to spend a lot of his life trying to manage how other people felt about him. You see, that was how he learned to relate with the world around him. But as he began addressing some of the things underneath that, something unexpected happened. He started doing things he never thought he could do. Not because someone else changed, but because he did. He did. He could say no. He could let someone be disappointed. He could stop fixing everything. He could allow another person to experience the consequences of their own choices. He could walk away from something without feeling like he abandoned somebody. And he could help someone without taking responsibility for them. And that was completely a different kind of freedom. Hey, JR, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you, Rajman. I appreciate that. And that was a completely different type of freedom, right? So, and then. So let me know in the comments if any of y'all related with any of those characters. And thank you all for sharing, because I'm glad that we're addressing the food addiction. A lot of people don't realize that food addiction, they just think, obesity. And I want to let you know that addiction and obesity are both what is considered diseases. So sometimes, yes, it's genetic. Sometimes it is social. Sometimes we learn to eat from people giving us food for comfort when we were children. And that's maybe unconsciously how we seek comfort. So it could be that social aspect of it, but whatever it is, the outcome's still the same, right? So, and then 3 people, 3 different stories. Jack was drinking, Maria was using food, David was learning to recognize the patterns he'd developed around addiction and relationships. But here's what they all had in common. Each one had something they were using to manage something they didn't know how to manage differently. That's all. They just didn't know how yet. And that doesn't mean they're stupid. That doesn't mean they're lazy. That doesn't mean anything. They just had to get rid of that negative self-dialogue and learn that they are totally capable, because a lot of times in these addictions, people are pleasing, right? And that in itself gave you a capacity that's beyond superhuman. It's all the things that you did to make other people happy. And y'all know that on this other conscious level, your soul is saying, look, you did all this to make other people happy. Just imagine what you could do for yourself. That's what my soul said anyway. I know it's not my clock, but thank you, Jen. Sometimes it's like that. So each one had something they were using to manage something they didn't know how to manage differently, was all. And the people around them had patterns too. Why is this kid continuing to go? Jack had people who kept fixing what his drinking damaged. Maria had built a life around taking care of everybody else and then found her own relief in food. And David had learned that he could spend his life trying to manage other people's responses and call it love, responsibility, or being a good person. And this is where I want to leave us today, not asking which one of these people am I, but asking, where do I recognize myself? Lilyberry, I weighed around 206. I was overweight, and then I lost a lot of weight, and now I'm at 120, which is a little underweight, but I feel so bad anytime I gain weight. That's interesting, Lilyberry. How tall are you? So knowing, what our health recommendations are, and really how we feel about ourselves, because I do not get on a scale. I can tell you that. I don't get on a scale. The only time I get on a scale is if I'm in Texas and I'm in the drugstore or at the Walmart counter, where they have that, and they have that little machine where you can check your blood pressure. Oh, girl. You are tall. 120 is really, really small. I'm not 120. No. And I'm 5'5". So I haven't seen 120 in a while. I used to be 120, but as we get older, that does factor, is that we need more weight on our bones so we don't look like skeletons. I think love between in a romantic way is just another way of saying I'm thirsty. And well, that can be that way, Askill, especially when we're young. I've been there before too. Lily, my parents are really short. I don't know what happened. I know my aunt, my grandmother was Greek, and she wasn't even 5 feet tall, And so my aunt, but most of my aunts are around 5 feet tall. And my Aunt Lana, my favorite aunt, she's still living today. She looks at me and she says, because I'm tall and I wouldn't say I'm thin, but I'm not, I'm not heavy either. And, little Greek woman, she was a little, she was a little round, but our family had all the addictions. And so my aunt's like, Stacy, what happened to you? I bet she was gorgeous and voluptuous at 206. But I understand the feeling of, that, because I told y'all I had an eating disorder too. My dad, sometimes for me, it was because I seen my dad struggle. And that's where, some of mine was social learning and my addiction. Of course, genetically, I inherited it. But my dad would get up to over 300 pounds. And then he would try to lose weight. And he used a drug called fasting, which was called Blue and Clears back in my day. And so I would take those Blue and Clears after, because I would see my dad lose 130 pounds. He was 5'11", and he would get down to 170, on his diet pills. But he had high blood pressure too, so he still wasn't healthy. And when he said he was taking fasting or doing fasting, I thought that, when he had 5 years clean and sober through religion, he said he was fasting, and that's the part of, a lot of people fast, and sometimes people don't have to be in religion to fast, but Dad would say he was fasting. But he was also taking a drug called fasting back in the day that was a diet pill, and so he would lose 130 pounds, And so I didn't want to have to struggle like he did. So I was proactive, and I started doing drugs when I was a teenager, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. Because I seen my dad struggle. He struggled, And he's a good man. He just didn't know better. When we know better, we'll do better. But he just didn't know better. He was trying to do better. So, looking at where do I recognize myself? Where am I reaching for something because I don't want to feel what I'm feeling, right? Maybe we're trying to be proactive, I don't know if that's Lily Berry's story, but that was mine. Was I could clearly see all growing up, I would hear about how my dad and my grandparents were alcoholic. And then, I learned to watch Dad lose weight. So when I felt like I was tipping a little bit, I would get into I call it the Lucky Charms of pills, Ramon. The GLPs, help too. I like that the GLPs aren't mind altering, really, except for taking away the food noise. But yeah, so the one, when you did the fastings and the Lucky Charms back in those days, it was Blue and Clears, Black Mollies, and Pink Hearts. So that's why I call it the Lucky Charms of drugs, because that's what I took. I didn't do intravenous drugs or anything like that, because pharmaceutical drugs are a big deal in addiction as well. And then there was the X-Lax too. I know y'all don't want to hear about no X-Lax, but there was a lot going on there. And the drinking on top of that. So, and the smoking weed. So I was not healthy. When we're doing these things, it's not healthy. That was not healthy. And then I wanted a boyfriend because I was thinner, right? So I kept choosing emotionally unavailable men. My grandpa drank a lot. My dad doesn't like drinking at all. He got really upset when he found out I was drinking because he doesn't want me to be. Yes. Those are definite, and they're validated pains, because it does cause pain. It does. It's not inconsequential, to where it doesn't mean that it doesn't cause a consequence for us and for the people around us, because as your dad's drinking affected him, and it does, it goes down. So this is what, just acknowledging. Do I, what we need? Do I need this, Because, your dad's just afraid probably that you've developed a gene that, that he has. And can you not put the chemical on top of it? There is chemical imbalances. And so sometimes People self-medicate a lot because of the chemical imbalances. I'm not a doctor, so go to a doctor if you feel like there's a chemical imbalance. I'm not telling you just that, I'm telling all y'all that. So, where am I saying I need? When what I really mean is, I don't know what else to do with this feeling. You know, sometimes we just don't know, because the need is usually a coping mechanism, a survival skill. And when we learn through healing, we can turn our survival skills into tangible tools to know when, what, where, and how to use them. But sometimes we got to look at the when, where, what, and how did I learn this, so that I can turn that negative dialogue into a positive action, right? Because we all have negative and positive in us. We live in an electromagnetic universe. Scientifically, our bodies are divinely created, and our bodies will tell us what's going on. All right. Well, you're about to get your comment deleted, Raul. But you're welcome to be here. I don't know if a backdoor Betty's a nice compliment or not. Maybe I'm not even knowing what that means. So, where am I fixing somebody else's consequences is a question we can ask ourselves. Where am I taking responsibility for things that aren't even mine? It's a compliment? Okay, Kim, we're good. It's a compliment. What does that mean? I know, Ramon, she's awesome. J-Pop, I'm 5'7", 125 pounds. As a guy, am I short? I don't know. I mean, that's not what our topic is today. So where am I using something to give myself a little relief? What does your doctors tell you? Salma, it's good evening to you. It's good to see you. I'm glad that you're here. And hello to Grinch. Thank you. Grinch is happy to see you too. So where am I using something to give myself a little relief while telling myself it doesn't really count? Like a pirate. That's right. And I'm down here in the Caribbean too. I like me some Johnny Depp. So where have I been giving my power away because I thought that was love, responsibility, or a survival required? Sometimes giving our power away was a survival skill, y'all, and we just didn't learn that that's what it was. Because maybe this week wasn't about finding out whether we're an addict. Maybe it was about becoming willing to see how we cope, right? And once we can see it, we have a choice. So in closing today, I want you to think about this, because I don't want you to walk away this week judging yourself. We learn to discern, because that's our greatest fear. I think one of our greatest fears, there's 3 of them that I can think of right off the top of my head, and I know there's more, and you're welcome to put them in the comments if you want. Good morning, G's Jaded Wasteds. Is one of our greatest fears is that, of being judged as human beings. That's why we give people our power, is we're afraid of being judged. Oh, they're this, they're that. They're all the pains of what we didn't get to heal from yet, right? We don't want people to see us as all the pain that we didn't get to heal from yet. There's also the fear of not getting what we want. That's a fear human beings carry. And the fear of not being able to keep what we have. Those are legitimate fears. However, they can control and run our nervous system and our mind on overdrive. And we can't enjoy life as long as we're running on that fear. So it's learning to regulate. I have been a fan of Madonna's music. I don't listen to Madonna so much anymore, but I am. When I hear her older music, I really like it. I like to dance to Madonna music, but she's great. She's a Leo like me, but okay. So, in closing, I don't want you to walk away judging Jack or Maria or anybody else, our characters in the story, if you're late. I have liked Michael Jackson. I grew up on Michael Jackson, and with saying that, with Michael Jackson, I grew up on Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley taught me how to dance, and if you've seen me dance, then you know, oh, that explains it. That explains it. So I remember 49 years ago, I was walking through the living room in my house, and the TV was always on at the time of day that it was on. Cartoons had gone off, obviously, because back in those days, you could only watch cartoons in the morning before school and after school, and then after school, after a while, the news started coming on. So the news started coming on, and it said, that the king of rock and roll has died 49 years ago today. The king of rock and roll has died. And I was walking through the living room and I'm like, what? Because I had just gotten to see Elvis Presley the year before that. I know Elvis Presley is way back, y'all. I ain't telling y'all my age. We don't talk about that on here, but y'all hear my fogey stories. So I don't hate Madonna because of that. I just don't have much in common with her music anymore, but I did when I was younger. Yes, Elvis Presley does go. I got to see Elvis when back in 1976, the year before he died. My grandpa used to work Spotlight at Tarrant County Convention Center in Fort Worth, Texas. And my grandpa got us some tickets. And I got up there to the stage, y'all. I was young. I was a little girl. But I went through security's arms. I didn't know that I was going to act like that. I had seen those things on TV where women were bouncing in their chairs crying. I was bouncing in my chair crying, just like those women I saw on TV when they were playing that Odyssey coming out. And then, then as soon as he comes out, all these women jump up and rush the stage. And I was a little girl. I could fit right through that crowd. I went up and I rushed the stage, and I got up there to that stage, and I did not get a scarf, but I got a wink. He's like, and then his security dude, I was over on the left-hand side of the stage. The security guy over there is telling me, little girl, you better go sit down before you get hurt. And I just looked at that security guy, and then I just looked at Elvis, and I just kept on doing what I was doing until they made me sit down. I don't even remember going to sit down. So, your grandpa was a huge up. Yes. I've been to Graceland many times. We went there when he was still alive. Our family went there to Memphis, Tennessee while he was still alive, and I snuck through the gate. His uncle used to be security. And so the gate would open maybe this wide. So, and I snuck through. I was 8 years old when I snuck through. And his uncle came running. There was a diner across the street. His uncle kept come running from across the street. My mom's like, Stacy Renee, get yourself back over here. Stacy Renee, get yourself back over here. So, yeah. So, J-pop, my favorite Michael Jackson song is Billie Jean, but I was watching Michael Jackson. When I say we only got to watch cartoons, the Saturday morning cartoons there was the Jackson 5. And I used to watch the Jackson 5, and I used to like ABC, easy as 1, 2, 3. I know, it was so cool. Yeah, you were born. I hope that I'm glad you're here if you're at a young age, because if you can learn these things that I learned from the School of Hard Knocks at a young age, then that makes me happy. Because I hope in my next life I know this at a younger age than I do now. Thank you so much. Nathan, hello. I'm having a weekend. It could be super. I've had more super ones, but I guess I've probably had worse ones too. So, yeah. It's a weekend. I'm so grateful to be here in this air conditioning. So, I want you to look at J-Pop. I also love Rock With You Off the Wall, and she's out of my life. Yes. You're 21? Good. I'm glad that you're here, because I'm hoping that this will make sense, because you don't have to, you can learn how to have that autonomy that we're talking about, because a lot of times we think something's wrong with us. Anybody here think something's wrong with me? And I want you all, I don't know what time it is, Cruel. It says here it's 10:22. So we're about to wrap this up. I'm going to finish here with this conclusion. But I'm not looking at the clock behind me. I'm looking at the clock on the computer in front of me. So, I want you all to think about these things, not with judgment, like I said. Oh, I wish I could have listened. I know, right? I wish I could listen to me at 21. At 21, I was saying, no one listens to me. But I was high, so there's that. There's that. Thank you, Drill. I appreciate that. I missed you too. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you so much. You all, if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and hit the like. And I want to see you again, because I'll be back on here tomorrow night at 6 p.m. I'm in Puerto Morelos, Mexico. Thank you so much, Drula. J-Pop at 21. I don't know what I was saying, because that's in the future. That's very cool because, I do believe in the electromagnetic field and the quantum field and things like this. And we have to, we can or cannot believe in those things. But I do believe that I'm where I am today because of a dream I had 10 years ago. Thank you, JR. And so when we realize our dreams, if we're living according to having our, mutual relationships rather than just living for somebody else, is we're all unity and community. That's what I love about here, is unity and community, and understanding that we have every right to be here, that you were born whole. These are the messages that I try to get us to understand, because a lot of times we don't feel it. And I understand that. I haven't always felt that way either. So when am I using something to give myself a little relief while telling myself it doesn't really count? That's what, we can take away today. Or where have I been giving my power away because I thought that was love, responsibility, or the survival? That's what it required. Maybe this week wasn't about finding out whether we're an addict. Maybe it was about becoming willing to see how we cope. And once we can see it, I already did that part. So I must have lost my spot, y'all. This is what happens. I'm trying to get us to the breathing because I do respect you and your time. I thank you so much for being here. Okay? All right. So, curiosity brings us back here. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can ask ourselves. Think about this. I see it. I see what I'm doing. I see what I'm reaching for. I see what I'm trying to escape. I see what I'm fixing. Because again, the best relationship you can have is with yourself, and it's the biggest adventure you can take. It's to yourself, your cells, and your soul. And we're about to breathe. I see what I'm controlling. I see what it's costing me. And now that I can see it, I have a choice. So next week we're going to take it one step further, because when you've lived around addiction, you can learn some very interesting ways of loving people. You can become the fixer, the rescuer, the peacekeeper, the one who takes care of everybody, the one who can't say no, and the one who feels responsible for somebody else's happiness. And sometimes you don't even realize that what you're calling love is actually a pattern that you learn to survive. So as we get curious and go into our breathing, I want us to ask ourselves in the breath, in our in-breath, what are my reasons? If I want to lose weight, and some of you don't need to, and some of us do, if I want to lose weight, am I making the choices? See, because I didn't realize that. If I have a reason for what I want, what do I want? And then my mind will work towards going to what I want. But oftentimes when we are in survival mode, we're just focusing on what we don't want. So that's the quantum field, is what do I want? When we talk about the electromagnetic field and the quantum field, what do I want? And when we get our brain, that neural pathway, and change, heal those fears, heal the fears of what we're running on, then we can go towards what we want. It is achievable, but we have to believe it to achieve it. So, on that in-breath, breathe in your reason for what you do want. It being you, whatever, it's your reason for what you do want. And then breathe out the excuses that we make. So next week we're going to talk about codependency. Okay? Y'all ready to breathe, darlings? Let me keep my glasses on for a minute. Y'all ready to breathe? Y'all ready for this? So yeah, then I'll go home pretty soon, and there's no TV, none of that, and there's silence and solitude. It's good to see you too, Nathan. Thank you all so much for being here. Smash that like if this was beneficial, if you liked this, and also if you've not subscribed, I hope that you'll consider subscribing and hitting that notifications, because I'm going to be back on here tomorrow night at 6 o'clock starting our week on codependency. And I hope that you'll keep an open mind that codependency isn't just about am I codependent on somebody else, which is what a lot of people think. So just like we broke down the addictions today, we're going to break down codependency next week, about what people perceive that something is sometimes and what it really is. Thank you, Willette. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad you enjoyed the relaxing environment. I appreciate that. So when we breathe, we're doing the regulation. Thank you, JR. And what the regulation does is it tells your body that you're safe. A lot of this urgency that we may feel and don't know why we're in a hurry, that we've always got something to do, that in that busyness, is maybe we've learned to esteem ourselves by how busy we are. Maybe that's where we feel like we're getting our worth. But you're worthy just sitting in that chair breathing, darling. If you've got a breath, you are worthy. Okay? I don't know. I can tell you not been here before because you don't know. You don't know. We don't talk about my age on here. We don't talk about my dating life, and we don't talk about religion or politics. But thank you. So we're going to breathe because it regenerates and it regulates. It regenerates your cells is what it does, because your cells love to have oxygen. Your body is not just something on a sheet of paper from math and science or from science and biology class back in 5th and 6th grade. Your body is really divinely created, and it's telling you things. It's communicating all the time with your brain, and your brain with your body. So it's about you controlling your brain and your body rather than your mind, your brain controlling it. It's amazing how far back we can think, how much information our brain contains. So it's about our neural pathways, and that amygdala that's transferring up and down your in your ganglia chains. So this is very important in your healing process and central nervous system and autonomic system, which your autonomic system is your automatic system to when you're triggered. What does automatically happen? Do I automatically grab a candy bar? Do I automatically grab this? Do I automatically grab this? That's your central nervous system seeing a trigger and then being like, I got to do something, that urgency. So we're going to slow down and breathe, darlings. Just breathe. And it will regulate. You'll feel safe. In this moment, you're safe if you're sitting right here. And it will regenerate, because when I took martial arts, it gave me more stamina in martial arts to be able to keep, sparring, which sparring is having more control, more focus when I can breathe. When we're in trauma response, we're not breathing. Willette, yes, I'm breathing today. A couple of errands to run. The rest of today will be a resting, healing day. Awesome. That sounds like a wonderful day. Gavin Stone. You're a brown belt in karate? Awesome. I got to be 2nd degree black belt. I don't practice, I'm not trying to do anymore, but I do remember what I do, and I do stay toned. So if I had to do any of my karate, I've never had to do it, but it does give you a sense of confidence that we know that we can. And for me, learning to look at myself in that mirror and do those katas and all that other stuff helped me to be able to look at myself in the mirror and my soul of eyes, but it also helped me to be able to look at other people in the eye, and that in itself is an ability to communicate, because our eyes communicate as well. When we're in fear, we may go, don't see me, don't see me, don't see me. And when we're confident and, it's like, yeah, I'm going to look in the eyes. Good morning, Binod. We're about to breathe. Thank you so much, Willette. I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to get down to the breathing now, y'all. What we do is 5 breaths, and I encourage you at anytime you feel like you're starting to feel anxious. This is, I'm not doing the whole anxiety breath that you're ready, JR? I'm not doing the whole anxiety breath because I only count on the part where we hold it, because we take a deep breath in, fill up our tummy, our shoulders rise, our heart opens, so our mind will open too. And then we're going to hold it for 4 counts, just 4. But if you can't hold it 4 counts, that's okay. Just do the best you can, because just slowing down a little bit. We're slowing things down. And then we're going to breathe out after that 4 count, or whatever you do. And then we'll breathe out slowly and gently, because we all need to be slow, gentle, and methodical with ourselves. So we're going to do 5 of these. Here we grow. Here we grow. So take a deep breath in. Hold it. And release. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Just 2 more. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Last one. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. All right. How y'all doing? Y'all feel safe and protected and divinely directed now? It is different today. I hope that it's back to my other background tomorrow. Yes, just in time for breathing. Good morning, Pammy. Just in time for breathing. Yes, I'm at my friend Sarai's. I want to thank Kim for moderating this meeting. Y'all give up the hearts for Kim. And also Sarai for me having this nice air-conditioned place to come here and to sit with y'all this time and not be sweating and perspiring because now I'm going home. And I'm just so grateful for you all being here this morning. Thank you all so much. Please like and subscribe and thank you. Thank you, Pammy. Much love to you. Nathan. Yes, you feel better, Nathan? All right, JR, you stay safe and be blessed too. Yes. Lily Berry. Thank you. I hope to see you again on here. I'll be back on here tomorrow night at 6 or Wednesday morning at 9. Okay, so whichever. Yes, thanks, Soraya. We love Soraya. And Binod, I feel better after breathing. Praise the divine. Yes, you are divinely created. I love you, Pammy. Jen, you are very welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. So thank you. You have a wonderful rest of your day. And JR, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all and I love y'all so much. I'm glad you're here and that you like being here. I think you subscribed and hit that notifications and I'll be back on here. Look, Carillas. Look, we don't talk about my dating status. We don't talk about my age and we don't talk about politics or religion here. This is a beautiful community and I love y'all so much. Binod. Yes, we do need to slow down, right, Binod? Yes, in this fast-paced generation. I know. Thank you all for being here. This Sunday is going to be amazing. Y'all have a wonderful week and I'll see you tomorrow and we'll talk about codependency. And Grinch says thank you too. Yeah, that's right. See? Grinch says, yes, that's right. All right. I love y'all. Have a super Sunday. And don't go to that racetrack in your mind today. Just slow down and breathe, darlings. All righty. Bye, Jen. Yes, and thanks. She says, thanks for being a wingman. Definitely wingman. All right, y'all. My other light went out. Oh, it's going to be like 91 here today. So it's not as hot as it is in Texas, but it's still hot. It's still hot, and it's muggy. It's humid. So that's the thing. But I'm going back to the house, and there's some solitude. I don't have electricity at home. Oh my gosh, Kim, 103 in Tennessee. Lord have mercy. There's a heat wave going on all over the world. John London was here earlier. He might have had to leave, but it's hot there too. So yes, y'all stay hydrated. Everybody stay hydrated. If you need some hydration tips, if you don't like drinking water, follow Miss Pammy, and she talks about drinking the different kinds of water. Your temperature's kind of cooled a bit in Cali. Yeah, they're going to cool next week in a lot of places, like in Europe, because I keep up with what's going on in Europe. It's already 90. Yeah, it's going to be hot walking home. Grinch is learning how to get used to his backpack, which is good because he's going to have to get used to a carrier when we get on that plane to go to Europe. 73 now in the highs. Oh, that's not bad. 73 is great. I can sleep when it's 73 degrees. I'm going to have to learn Celsius. I did not get to see the mini last night. The moon last night. No, I didn't see it. The trains are coming off the railway. Oh my goodness. You just we don't realize how much the heat can affect things, do we? I bet it did look cool. Hopefully I'll get to see it tonight. I'll try to see it tonight. So, yeah. Thank you for letting me know, Pammy. Very cool, yeah, because it was a new moon last week. I made my new moon wishes. Did you make some new moon wishes? I did. I've got a plan. Got a plan. All right, y'all. Have a super day, and I'm sending you so much love. And I'll see you tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. All right, you have fun at the Walmart. You're very welcome, Pam. Bye, Nathan. Bye, you all. Thank you.